Hi, I'm Paddy Ryan, and this will be my hermeneutical talk on my exegesis of Job, Thinking on Suffering. The title is, How do we talk about suffering? Thinking on Job in today's world. My personal overview of the book of Job. The book of Job in the Hebrew Bible displays the full gamut of suffering experienced by a person who has faith and belief. It gives an insight into the mind and emotions of a man who has lost everything, just simply wanting to know why this has happened to them, as they have done nothing wrong. It deals with how those around him, who through their friendship try to explain his situation in light of what they know and understand, and try to give comfort. Ultimately, it deals with how we react in the face of grief and loss, even knowing of God. My thesis is this. From the analysis and reflections from reading Job, I believe that suffering has, and will be, part of the human condition. It is how we view this personally and corporately as Christians that encounter the same doubts and struggles that can help us and those around us. These are the main themes I'll be exploring. How people today view and react to suffering, comparing this to Job. Can we as Christians be a help or a hindrance? How do we respond to the question, if God is a good and loving God, how can he let this happen? So, how people view and react to suffering. In view of what we're experiencing in regard to COVID-19, nothing in the present day has changed in how people deal with suffering from what I have observed. We see heartbreaking and heartwarming stories born through the ordeals we see daily in life and through the media. But still, people react as Job did, in pain and grief. But unlike Job, many do not have a belief in a greater force outside of themselves, who has created all that exists. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the Lord, from Job 1:21. Also, like Job, people search for answers as to why this has happened to them, or affected them somehow. In some or most cases is a need for justification of this, which may be well founded and yearnful, but may still give little comfort, especially if there's nothing except this existence. As Richard Dawkins bleakly states, this universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. At the worst extremes, suffering, whether man-made or natural, make us as human beings view our lives in a different perspective and can change our approach. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and leading psychotherapist, came to these conclusions. The prisoner who had lost faith in the future, his future, was doomed. With his loss of belief in the future, he also lost his spiritual hold. He let himself decline and became subject to mental and physical decay. But Frankl goes on to give an alternative to this. What was really needed was a fundamental change in our attitude towards life. We needed to stop asking ourselves about the meaning of life, and instead think of ourselves as those who are being questioned by life, daily and hourly. I believe this is what we see in Job when he is finally met by God and has his life put into perspective with that of all that has been created as well, replying, "See, I am of small account. What shall I answer you?" From Job 40, verse 4. So, as Christians, can we help or hinder this? If we look at Job, we see some of his friends hear of his misfortune and travel to be with him. At first they do very well, and just be that physical presence and initially listen to him. It seems to go wrong after this, when they start giving their opinions on how and why this has happened, but are way off the mark, referring to Troy Martin in my exegesis. Job's three friends astutely realise that, if Job is righteous, Yahweh cannot be, for Yahweh is punishing Job without cause. His three friends fall silent, Yahweh being God. Just like Job's friends, we should be available, if possible, to be that presence that sometimes is all that is needed. so that person knows they're not alone in their distress and torment. Words of comfort may or may not be needed, but they need to be thoughtful and considered, not like those friends of Job, as Jeff Lucas highlights. Recently, I met a young mother who was told by her Christian friends, who were perhaps the descendants from those comforters that Job had to put up with, that the terminal disease that was ravaging her child was because of some secret sin in her life. So what, if any, advice or counsel should we offer? My answer would be, if you have to speak, then ask normal everyday questions. How are you? Is there anything I can do? But expect the unexpected. Some people will react badly, some burst into tears, others seem unresponsive. Respond to all of this with the attitude of loving that person as a hurt person, being practical by helping them if they want this. If we try to do more than this by offering our own thoughts and spiritual philosophies before we're asked, then this can do more harm than good in my experience. As Krish Kandar so succinctly puts it, perhaps too we may be reminded of the need for genuine humility, the need to be slow to speak and quick to listen, referring to James 1:19. So here's the big question, how do we answer it? How do we answer? How can God let this happen if he is good and loving, when people know that we believe in God? Looking at Job, we see that he had faith in a God that is good to those who follow his commands, referring to Delange. God in the Bible knows everything and can do as he pleases. Nothing is beyond his ability. Sometimes his patience is tried too far by selfishness and rebelliousness. More often he is loving and forgiving. I would argue that Job had a faith in a God that showed him he was capable of all things, and who was Job to question him? Job accepts and acknowledges this in Job 42, as Martin again asserts. The book concludes with the two no longer as combative litigants, but as once again faithful devotee and benevolent deity. In contrast, we have been given the option to accept God through his Son Jesus, who was God in human form, and has done the hard part for us if we accept and acknowledge that he has, and try to copy his example. As Julian of Norwich praises it like this: therefore he wants us to understand that the noblest thing he has ever made is mankind, and the supreme essence and the worthiest example is the blessed soul of Christ. Man's soul is united with God, and by this union it is made holy forever. Thinking on this and Job, I would return to the Bible, but look at what Jesus said when questioned by a lawyer in Matthew 22:34-40, when asked what was the greatest commandment in the law. Paraphrasing this as, love your God with all of your being, and love your neighbour as you would like to be loved. So what I would like to hear or see or hear if I was in this suffering position would be someone like this, thinking and being this kind of person, walking that mile in my shoes. This would also incorporate trying to be the person Paul, the apostle, describes in writing in Romans 12:9, chapter 12, verses 9-16. Again paraphrasing. Let your love be genuine and try to be good. Be a blessing, rejoice with others, but also weep with others. Try to be in agreement and remember to be humble. I would honestly answer that I don't have an answer to why God would let this happen, but I try to live with the suffering that has happened to me. It's not easy, in fact it's really hard, but I believe and hope God has a better plan through what Jesus has done for me. I'd like to think we're in a better position than Job in this respect, as he believed he had no other option except God intercede, and is best summed up by Frankl. When a man finds that it is his destiny to suffer, he will have to accept his suffering as his task, his single and unique task. No one can relieve him of his suffering or suffer in his place. His unique opportunity lies in the way in which he bears his burden. So to conclude, nothing in my opinion has changed since the days of Job in regard to suffering. It is part of humanity, But as Christians, we need to believe that this has ultimately been reconciled through Jesus and have hope. Although we may suffer, one day things will change. Best described, again, by Jeff Lucas. But we're never promised that we won't suffer. On the contrary, we are promised that we will. The statistics are impressive. 1 out of every 1 people will die. Until Jesus returns, none of us are going to get out of here alive. We'll lose people we love. Unexplainable things will happen. Thank you.